All right, I am here with David Hintze from Folktale Media. David, thank you for coming today to our virtual meeting.
Of course, yeah. Happy to be here.
Great. So, before we dive into everything, tell me a little bit. What is your business? What do you do? What do you provide clients? All that good stuff.
Absolutely. So, Folktale Media is a personalized documentary service for legacy preservation. So, essentially, our finished product, what we're giving to the clientele, is a quality edited documentary that is going to last for hopefully tens of generations to preserve the stories of that particular couple. And not just their stories, but also the way they smile, the way they laugh, the way they interact with each other, all those the little things that make the couple unique and that make them memorable.
Got it. So how long is a finished product usually?
Absolutely. So that can be pretty tough to peg down. Our goal is to get it within kind of a reasonable, like movie length time.
Okay.
So it so that you could have kids watching it, relatively young kids watching it. They'll be interested by all the B-roll footage involved in it. It'll seem interesting to them, but it won't seem like, oh man, we've got to go watch great uncle Steven's video now, and we're gonna be here for 3 hours. So generally speaking, our goal is to get it to an hour and a half or under. Any additional footage or kind of extraneous footage we put into this separate blooper reel and extras reel, so that the family can still have it if they want to. But our goal really is to provide a pretty succinct documentary of the most important stories from their lives.
Got it. So, something I was curious about is how is that delivered? Like,
Yeah,
are they
absolutely.
given like a DVD or like?
Yeah, this has been probably one of the most fun parts of the product development, because a lot of these services, a lot of these tech services, or even if they're converting media from photos to digital, a lot of times it's just sent via like a link online. And at Folktale Media, whenever we were figuring out ways to deliver that, we felt that really delivering by just a link, it seems so there's no real concept of value. Like we needed some sort of physical artifact to show all of the tens of hours, actually more than tens of hours. I mean, we're talking 60 plus hours of a total editing time per product. So we need something that could show that to the clientele. So right now we send it out via custom wooden USB drives, so engraved wooden USB drives,
Oh.
a custom leather-bound DVD case with custom DVD covers. So it looks like it's going to have it's very very personalized, and it's
So it's
very
almost
very
like a journal.
absolutely, yep,
Okay.
absolutely right, yeah. So it's shipped inside this like the our hard drives and the custom leather DVD case are shipped inside this box that resembles a book. So a box made out of wood resembling a book, so that there can be kind of that physical artifact and that symbol of the high quality that is present in all of our work, but that can be seen as him is opening up. So.
Yeah. So what? I mean, that's obviously a very unique business. So what inspired you to go about and say, hey, I'm going to start a business where I create a movie length documentary for people to deliver to their kids.
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably the prime reason why, like, really the thing that kind of kicked it off, was listening to a lot of these World War II, Vietnam podcasts. So they bring this veteran on. He'd have incredible stories to tell. I really liked the way those were all edited, where there was no interview or questions. It was just the guy talking about his stories. It was really cool. It was very succinct, very compact. It was interesting, but there was no real services like that for more regular people, or I guess people who aren't veterans. There's no
Yeah.
there's no real services for
People
that.
who have more normal stories.
Right, exactly. And those stories, while they may be normal, like, while they may seem kind of boring to the rest of society, like those stories are really really interesting to those families. So as I was kind of looking around and thinking upon my own desires to really have stories from my group, from my granddad who died very very early. Like I would have loved to have heard the way he talked, heard the way he laughed, seen the way he smiled and told stories. But I never got to see any of that because really none of that was preserved. So as I was kind of listening to a lot of these podcasts, it started to form within my brain. Like, why not preserve that for everyday people? And then from there, it kind of just took off, and we started to work on having greater and greater quality to our products as well. Incorporating the visual element, and then all of the additional B-roll footage, and just kind of continuing to ramp up the quality of it until we get to the point where we're having a personalized documentary at the same level of both editing and level of of interesting B-roll footage of really any of these documentaries that you might see off of Amazon or similarly. So.
Yeah. So okay. So then going back to that, when did you officially like open your digital doors, so to speak?
Absolutely. So I believe the LLC was purchased in April. So we were
Okay.
incorporated as of April. So it's still a very, very brand new business. The website itself has only been out for a little period of time. There was a lot more product development that we kind of realized that we had to do after we conceptualized.
Yeah. That this is usually how it
Yeah, right,
goes.
of course. So like, at first it was very much, this is awesome. We have a basic idea. It was very much just we go in, interview the couple, and then present it to them. Here's a recording. The more we thought about it, the more we realized, listen, if we're going to do this, if we're going to be trying to preserve stories for future generations, we really should be doing it to like super high quality so that it's actually interesting to the family. It's
Yeah.
actually like worthy of preservation, and not just a minor step up from a home video. So.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So then, as far as, you're 7 months old as of recording this. That's, for doing money, then that was difficult math for me to do. What has been, client acquisition in the early months, and even going forward, as we go into 2025, what does that look like? Where are your clients coming from? What are your marketing efforts kind of look like right now?
Yeah, for sure. So right now it's been a lot of really just networking and specifically pitching it to a lot of these older business people who have been in their field for a while, who have who honestly have the funds necessary to buy a really, really premium product.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of interacting with a lot of these businessmen, so local businessmen, local politicians. We're finding a lot of potential clientele customers. We're finding a much greater percentage of customers from the people we talk to in that setting. Now, obviously, the goal in the future and really going forward is to be able to create cheaper renditions of our product that are available to a much broader swath of the U.S. population. Because, of course, our goal at Folktale is not just to preserve the stories of the 0.5%, but to preserve the stories of most of America, because we believe it's important to know your family history. But right now, it's been a lot of networking. We've put in some appearances at various conferences, so a lot of business conferences. We're moving towards getting more involved in the art world because our product is a piece of art amongst other things. So it's been a multi-pronged effort, but really not a lot of cold calling, a lot more networking.
Yeah. Most people that produce, movies aren't doing a lot of cold calling. But
Right.
it is a lot of, pitching and networking. Um, how did, so tell me, I'm actually going to reverse the order I usually ask these questions in. So tell me a little bit like kind of like what your tech stack and equipment looks like. Um, my next question is usually like, hey, how did you like, get the money to start a business? Like what did funding look like? But
Right.
I don't really know even what that would look, what you're, funding that product, what you're even funding.
Right.
So tell me a little bit like kind of like what the process is, what tech stack, equipment, things like that looks like at Folktale.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the overall technology and the tech that we bring into each of these, recordings, it is this multi-camera setup, lighting setup, really top of the line sound equipment setup, and beyond that, I mean, even like, just in terms of organizations and software applications, we use a lot of like Monday.com for a lot of our organization stuff. That's great for low volume stuff. I'm not sure how it would work at a higher volume level, but when we're talking about really relatively low volume, high quality products, it works well because it allows us to have a kind of to have a very intense deep dives into very, very specific facets of a particular project at a time. But yeah, I mean, overall, it really has not been a terrible lot of upfront costs.
Okay.
And in reality, it's been great being able to do several.
You didn't have to go like begging for money from investors or
Exactly.
ask your parents for a loan.
Yeah, absolutely. I recently read Elon Musk's documentary, Elon Musk biography, and that was very, it was very, very well done. That was Isaac.
Yeah,
Trying to-
Starts with a W. I'll think of it.
Yes, yes, and that book was fantastic. But kind of going through that, I've realized more and more that really maintaining control over your equity, over your ownership, is extremely important. And that it's worth it to maybe take things a little bit slower if you can make sure you're maintaining as much control over the product and really over the quality of the product at the end, and you're not cutting corners because of external pressure applied to you by investors. So it was very much a concerted effort to keep funding within the company, both from private funding and additionally from running from having this brief run of heavily discounted products, which allowed us to not only get experience and not only build up the quality and tweak some of the the minor any of the minor issues that came up, but it also really allowed us to be able to to get enough money to kind of build up a bit of a fund, a bit of a cushion for future investments, for investing into marketing, including advertisements and whatnot. So
yeah. So as far as equity goes, is it a partnership, or I'm trying to remember because I know you posted about this recently.
yes, it is a partnership. So my co-founder Samuel Husted is really the brains of the technical operations. So really all of the editing, a lot of the technical aspects to how we develop our product, including the ways in which we as we continue to refine the product, different technical elements that we implement to make it look really just above and beyond.
Got it. So then, now leaning kind of more into what we do. What kind of things do you do, because it is a partnership, to kind of like track cash flow, track equity between the two owners? Like, is it just done in QuickBooks? Is there a handshake agreement?
Yeah. So it's been really interesting trying to figure out to what level of complexity we really want to to ramp that system up to. Right now it is predominantly QuickBooks. I found their stuff to be really, really helpful, just in terms of a relatively low cost solution that does provide a lot of value. And I had some experience with that as well, through various other other ventures that I was or am still involved in, and I had enjoyed that, especially being a sole proprietor. Being more of a sole proprietor. It's a little bit more tricky, with a partnership.
Yeah. Do you have a bookkeeper, or are you doing it all in house?
We do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We do have our own bookkeeper. He's great. He does bookkeeping, tax preparation, and then we have our own CPA who handles all that.
Got it.
It's great. I'm not any sort of tax genius or really any sort of bookkeeping genius. So as much as I can outsource the stuff that I'm really not good at, I would like to do so.
Yeah. So as far as in the early stages of, this is actually like prime time for me to ask, kind of about like keeping the personal and business, not funds, because it's not really what I'm getting at, but just flow. Like, you're starting a business. A lot of money usually goes out the door for several months, especially in the early bit until you grow. So how do you balance that, especially as you do have a family, and keep those two things in tension?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely a very tricky, a really tricky question, because as an entrepreneur and as someone who loves to take, or who's not afraid to take risks, it can be difficult when you think, yes, the next big development's only $5,000 around the corner. and it can get difficult, to not just want to continue spending money to just try to do customer acquisition or whatever. Ultimately, it comes down to, for me, really just establishing a great safety blanket for the family first and foremost, and making sure that you maintain that, and also growing at setting a fixed rate at which you are seeking to invest into your future as well, whether that be towards a house fund or investment fund. But seeking to have those first and foremost really is important, obviously, because obviously the welfare of my family and the security of my family is of utmost importance, even as I'm trying to seeking to make more money with this, or and especially in the early days where you're not making a ton of money with this. So first and foremost, safety blanket, saving, investing towards the future. Anything beyond that, I love to throw I love to throw into the business, include even if it's at the expense of me getting toys of my own. So.
Yeah. So speaking of sort of like investing for the future, because I think most people when they hear that just think retirement, which is fine because that's honestly that's complex enough on its own.
Right.
But when there's kind of like you mentioned, there's purchasing a house or saving for school or what are those things. How does that work its way back into you also have there's almost like two plans that are happening. You have a business financial plan and then you have like a personal financial plan. So how does carrying those two things together when you're specifically as it comes to saving for the future work?
Yeah, for sure. So what I would break it down, and how I break it down, is not necessarily the case that saving for the future is just independent of the business. So obviously, if the business grows, if it takes off, that is technically saving for the future. Now I know a lot of I've had this conversation with another wealth management, a buddy of mine who's very adamant that investing in your business is not saving for the future. It's a different thing, and I'm sure we could discuss that probably in great detail. But if we're separating it down into, if we're really trying to separate that into personal and business, the personal element for me looks a lot more like saving towards investing into specifically into housing. That's been my preferred method, especially given the sweat equity that's possible to pour into a potential property and increase the value. That's really where I prefer to be saving, to be saving towards in terms of investment.
Got it. So as far as like growing, it's almost all of your investing, so to speak, is equity driven. It's equity, whether that's in a house or in your business. Not necessarily equity as it comes into like a retirement account or going and buying stocks. It's mostly in it's in things and it's intangible things that you have.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, because it's ultimately my goal is not just to build wealth for myself. That'd be great and that'd be awesome, and I would love to have that. But really, my goal is to build wealth for future generations. So, even if Folktale takes 10 years, to really take off, or whatever. Let's just say it takes forever to make, to really be able to ramp up to a high level. Even if that's the case, my goal and my sights really are set on multi-generational wealth building for my son, for my sons and daughters, and for their sons and daughters. So with that in mind, it really helps me to stabilize my penchant for wanting to take on risk, because I know that I don't have to take on too much risk, because this is a hopefully many 100-year proposition and not just a 30-year proposition.
Yeah, it's not get rich quick is usually like doesn't work, but get rich slow and methodically is not quite. It's very boring sounding. It's
Right.
not as good of a tagline.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as investment goes, what's kind of the decision driver for putting investment money back into Folktale? Is there like certain identifiers that you're looking for? Like, okay, these things require capital, but I know I'm getting X amount out of it. Like, it's not usually that easy. So what things do you look for when you're trying to get value back out of your company with an investment?
Absolutely, yeah. And this would be probably where I point to like Charlie Munger or guys like that who really loved to go in and just cut costs mercilessly. Actually, Stan Walton would be a good example of this too, and the fact that he was always kind of nickel and diming his way along to success. Walmart for years didn't actually have any sort of like shelving system. It was a lot of like handmade shelving system. Stuff was hung from the ceilings. It was not a very nice looking system, but it worked for him. It was very very he obviously built a very successful empire off of very little money input, and that's because he was able to grow fast. By cutting costs. So similar or in slightly different application, obviously, because we're doing a quality product. It has to be very, very high level quality. But as much as possible, really not investing in needless tech. And that's where my co-founders really come in a handy as well. I know some co-founders who love tech are always looking for the next piece of cool camera equipment or microphone equipment, and bringing it to their funders. Or
every business, by the way, has that. It's just a different so obviously yours is going to be recording equipment. I made this comment to somebody else who has an RIA the other day. It's just like if someone came in here and didn't have a plan about what fintech like they were going to buy, everything is so bright and shiny. you could easily blow thousands and thousands of dollars a month
Yep.
in tech, and then you
Yeah.
have that just which on what like it's a good problem to have. Like having a number of good quality services to choose from is usually not something people complain about.
Right, right, absolutely. Yeah, it's been so. I guess for us then the hard tech element's not nearly as tempting because once you kind of have that set up, once you kind of have the all necessary equipment, the necessary editing stuff, that's basically set up. You can, I mean, expansion really looks like expanding to multiple crews, really, I mean, expansion and costs start to sink more so into employee training and making sure that we have the right level of employee quality. So that's where we're really going to start to spend a lot of money here in just a little bit. But what's been especially tempting to me right now has been all the kind of the networking tools. There's so many that you can buy or get involved in. And for me, trying to connect with people and do sales, it's very tempting. So right now, like my latest has been all these different chambers of a commerce or different clubs in the area because it's a great opportunity to get to connect. But obviously, I don't have to have those to make a sale. So for me, in my mind, it's really just trying to keep those two things separate. I can make a sale without going there and really really trying to weigh up and figure out before I purchase something if there's actually going to be value in it. So
Yeah. Got it. So as far as like project time goes, how long does it actually like if someone, if I came to you today and I said, "David, I want a movie." How long does it how long would I wait for a movie?
absolutely. So our current lead times are roughly 3 months.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a long it's a long project.
It is absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, because we're putting in on each of these, we're putting in 80 hours total.
Yeah.
So it's a significant. I mean, I'm talking total hours.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know sometimes it feels like it takes me 3 months to produce like a 7-minute video, so I can only I can only extrapolate in my mind what how long it takes for a 2-hour long documentary style movie. So I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier because I think this is important for business owners in general. Is the when you're looking at long-term wealth building, is because as far as return on dollars, most of the time your business or even real estate we talked about is going to be how you get the most return.
Right.
But there is one risk unique to those two things that you don't have with stocks, let's say, which is liquidity.
Yep.
So when people say high risk, high reward, yes, that's true, but that's only if you can get out.
Right.
So
Right.
what does that how does that sort of impact like long term? Like, well, first let me ask this: like, would long term, like your goal to be like to pass down the business to your kids or whatever it is, or would it be to sell it?
Yeah, so this has been a really interesting question that I've kind of grappled with a little bit, and I've really loved having all these biographies of different founders to turn to and kind of see what they did and how it turned out. So on the one hand, there's been a lot of companies, especially throughout Europe, that have handed their company down to future family members for generations, and it's worked out really well. I mean, Enzo Ferrari, starting at Ferrari, handing that down for multiple generations. Gucci, famously, like handing it down for multiple generations. And then there's a lot of other companies. For instance, once again, Walmart, because I just read that biography. Sam Walton, his kids weren't necessarily interested in running it. Like they were involved in kind of ancillary aspects of the business, but they didn't really want to run the whole thing. So he ended up going public with that, and made his family a whole lot of money. I mean, all his kids are going to be, and grandkids and great grandkids are going to be set for a long time. But in terms of what I've kind of taken away, if my children's interest is at all aligned with the businesses, then I would like to pass that down. If not, the goal is at that point, if they're not interested in pursuing and continuing Folktale Media, obviously the goal would then be to parlay that into continued wealth for them. So whether that means selling it off, whether that means transferring ownership in exchange for royalties or whatever into the future, that would be kind of how I would handle that. So ultimately, I don't really have any concrete plans right now because I don't have kids.
But the ideal would be ideal would be to pass it down, and then if that doesn't work, then maybe either the sale or royalties situation or something like that. Got it. Okay. So then if, um, trying to think of how I want to ask the question.
Yeah.
So if you, I mean, and if you get to a point where, um, and maybe I should ask it more about like how it works with the partnership. What like, because you have a bonus, like you have an advantage that many people don't, which is that because you actually have someone else who owns it with you, like there's a, if you come to a point of selling it, you have a buyer possibly.
Right. Yep.
Is that, I mean, and does he feel the same way about, or is that even something like you guys have even gone, talked about, like what to do with this thing this baby that you built together?
Yes, yeah.
What happens?
Right. So I mean, obviously, we're very much in the, kind of in the middle of all of the crazy startup life, and just enjoying the buzz of continued problems and trying to overcome those. But long term, there really is I think that there's underlying understanding that what we're building and whatever we seek to build, we are seeking to build for future generations. And I think there's a, and honestly, I hate to bring up theology, but I definitely think there's a theological element to it in the concept of covenantal theology, and the idea that you are building, that's not just that you are not just an individual before God, but that you're also as a husband and as a future father. I'm the leader of a family, and it's my goal to provide for them as well. So, given that united theology, given that united underlying ethos, there is a consensus of opinion going forward, which is really it's really it really provides a sense of security, like in knowing that we both have a good reason for doing so, and we're not just self-interested. It would be so much more difficult if I was partnering with somebody who didn't have that underlying ethos, who was just in it for the money.
Yeah.
Because there'd be a lot less, or potentially a lot less constancy with regard to adherence to the business.
Yeah. Well, and I think like in something it sounds like partnerships tend to drive businesses apart most of the time, but it's because of it's actually the inverse of what you just described, which is that you have people who both have who do the same thing, and so then who think we should just start a business together, and then they actually start doing it and realizing hey, we do things totally differently.
Right.
We care about not even close to the same things.
Yes.
We have totally different priorities. Like people in my space, they'll start a partnership with somebody, and then like they'll have someone who's like really into like financial planning, and then someone who's really into like just portfolio management, and then they're trying to run the same business and it doesn't work, and they end up
Right.
there's a podcast and they're saying is the only ship most partnerships be is like a shipwreck.
Yeah.
Whereas it doesn't sound like you had that problem where you have shared vision, you have not just shared vision but shared methodology about actually like going about and doing business together.
Right. Yeah, and just to kind of add on as well, it does help to be very intentional when you're forming a partnership, to look at what you're responsible for as each partner. And it seems so simple to say, but I feel like a lot of people don't do that. More to your point, like they kind of just go into business thinking, oh, this will be fun, we're friends, let's go into business. When in reality, what they really should be thinking of is, okay, how do our skill sets work together and mesh well together? I mean, in some regard, there's a reason why marriage is often compared to a business partnership, and it's because there is some of the same elements. Like, you have to be able to work well together. You have to get along. You have to be able to work through disagreements without the whole thing breaking apart. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think a lot of partnerships dissolve for the same reason a lot of businesses fail, which is that you have people who are really good at a practice who then think, I should start a business. And it's like, great, but you may not actually be good at running a business, because running a business and doing your craft, this happens all the time with doctors. Mm-hmm. Doctors will be really good at being a doctor, and then they'll start their own practice and then realize, I actually don't know how to run a business.
Right. Yeah.
And then things will not work out, and then you realize, hey, you make like $500,000 a year, but you're broke. So what, so what's going on here? This doesn't sound right. Yeah. So, David, thank you for being on our pilot episode, so to speak. I definitely I want to have you back eventually and talk more about wealth building as far as in a business and real estate versus like in your retirement account or something.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I'd be happy to
So
chat about that.
fantastic. So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you later.
All right, wonderful.